The method of capitalism's destruction rests on never letting the world discover what it is that is being destroyed, on never allowing it to be identified within the hearing of the young. The purpose of this book is to identify it. The guilt for the present state of the world rests on the shoulders of those who are over 40 years old today, with a very few exceptions, those who, when they spoke, said less than they knew, and said it less clearly than the subject demanded. This book is addressed to the young, in years or in spirit, who are not afraid to know, and are not ready to give up. What they have to discover, what all the efforts of capitalism's enemies are frantically aimed at hiding, is the fact that capitalism is not merely the practical, but the only moral system in history. See Atlas Shrugged. The political aspects of Atlas Shrugged are not its theme. Its theme is primarily ethical, epistemological, the role of the mind in man's existence, and politics necessarily is one of the theme's consequences. But the epistemological chaos of our age, fostered by modern philosophy, is such that many young readers find it difficult to translate abstractions into political principles and apply them to the evaluation of today's events. This present book may help them. It is a non-fiction footnote to Atlas Shrugged. Since every political system rests on some theory of ethics, I suggest to those readers who are actually interested in understanding the nature of capitalism that they read first The Virtue of Selfishness, a collection of essays on the objectivist ethics, which is a necessary foundation for this present book. Since no political discussion can be meaningful or intelligible without a clear understanding of two crucial concepts, rights and government, yet these are the two most strenuously evaded in today's technique of obfuscation, I suggest that you begin this book by reading or rereading two essays from that earlier collection, which you will find here reprinted in the appendix, Man's Rights and the Nature of Government. Most of the essays in this book appeared originally in the Objectivist newsletter, now in magazine format, The Objectivist. Others are based on lectures or papers, as indicated. Some of the essays cover, in brief summary, the answers to the most widely spread fallacies about the economics of capitalism. These essays appeared in the intellectual ammunition department of the Objectivist newsletter and were written in answer to questions from our readers. Those who are interested in studying political economy will find in the appendix a recommended bibliography on that subject. Now a word about the contributors to this book. Robert Hessen is presently completing his doctorate in history at Columbia University and is teaching in Columbia's Graduate School of Business. Alan Greenspan is president of Townsend Greenspan and Company Incorporated, Economic Consultants. Ayn Rand, New York, July 1966. P.S. Nathaniel Branden is no longer associated with me, with my philosophy, or with the Objectivist. Ayn Rand, New York, November 1970. Theory and History. Chapter 1. What is Capitalism? By Ayn Rand. The disintegration of philosophy in the 19th century and its collapse in the 20th have led to a similar, though much slower and less obvious, process in the course of modern science. Today's frantic development in the field of technology has a quality reminiscent of the days preceding the economic crash of 1929. Riding on the momentum of the past, on the unacknowledged remnants of an Aristotelian epistemology, it is a hectic, feverish expansion, heedless of the fact that its theoretical account is long since overdrawn, that in the field of scientific theory, unable to integrate or interpret their own data, scientists are abetting the resurgence of a primitive mysticism. In the humanities, however, the crash is past, the depression has set in, and the collapse of science is all but complete. The clearest evidence of it may be seen in such comparatively young sciences as psychology and political economy. In psychology, one may observe the attempt to study human behavior without reference to the fact that man is conscious. In political economy, one may observe the attempt to study and to devise social systems without reference to man. It is a philosophy that defines and establishes the epistemological criteria to guide human knowledge in general, and specific sciences in particular. Political economy came into prominence in the 19th century, in the era of philosophy's post-Kantian disintegration, and no one rose to check its premises or to challenge its base. Implicitly, uncritically, and by default, political economy accepted as its axioms the fundamental tenets of collectivism. Political economists, including the advocates of capitalism, defined their science as the study of the management or direction or organization or manipulation of a community's or a nation's resources. The nature of these resources was not defined. Their communal ownership was taken for granted, and the goal of political economy was assumed to be the study of how to utilize these resources for the common good. The fact that the principal resource involved was man himself, that he was an entity of a specific nature with specific capacities and requirements, was given the most superficial attention, if any. Man was regarded simply as one of the factors of production, along with land, forests, or mines, as one of the less significant factors, since more study was devoted to the influence and quality of these others than to his role or quality. Political economy was, in effect, a science starting in midstream. It observed that men were producing and trading. It took for granted that they had always done so and always would. It accepted this fact as the given, requiring no further consideration, and it addressed itself to the problem of how to devise the best way for the community to dispose of human effort. There were many reasons for this tribal view of man. The morality of altruism was one. The growing dominance of political statism among the intellectuals of the 19th century was another. Psychologically, the main reason was the soul-body dichotomy permeating European culture. Material production was regarded as a demeaning task of a lower order, unrelated to the concerns of man's intellect, a task assigned to slaves or serfs since the beginning of recorded history. The institution of serfdom had lasted in one form or another till well into the 19th century. It was abolished politically only by the advent of capitalism, politically but not intellectually. The concept of man as a free, independent individual was profoundly alien to the culture of Europe. It was a tribal culture down to its roots. In European thinking, the tribe was the entity, the unit, and man was only one of its expendable cells. This applied to rulers and serfs alike. The rulers were believed to hold their privileges only by virtue of the services they rendered to the tribe, services regarded as of a noble order, namely armed force or military defense. But a nobleman was as much chattel of the tribe as a serf. His life and property belonged to the king. It must be remembered that the institution of private property, in the full legal meaning of the term, was brought into existence only by capitalism. In the pre-capitalist eras, private property existed de facto, but not de jure, i.e., by custom and sufferance, not by right or by law. In law and in principle, all property belonged to the head of the tribe, the king, and was held only by his permission, which could be revoked at any time, at his pleasure. The king could and did expropriate the estates of recalcitrant noblemen throughout the course of Europe's history. The American philosophy of the rights of man was never grasped fully by European intellectuals. Europe's predominant idea of emancipation consisted of changing the concept of man as a slave of the absolute state embodied by a king to the concept of man as a slave of the absolute state embodied by the people, i.e., switching from slavery to a tribal chief into slavery to the tribe. A non-tribal view of existence could not penetrate the mentalities that regarded the privilege of ruling material producers by physical force as a badge of nobility. Thus, Europe's thinkers did not notice the fact that during the 19th century, the galley slaves had been replaced by the inventors of steamboats, and the village blacksmiths by the owners of blast furnaces, and they went on thinking in such terms, such contradictions in terms